Lesson planning. Format model of lesson planning. A lesson plan is a detailed description of an individual lesson that a teacher plans to teach on a given day. It is a way for you to plan and prepare your class. There are lots of different methods for structuring lesson plans, but the one we use throughout this training module is the format model, which is the Peace Corps standard format. Format follows a constructivist approach to learning, which basically means that instead of memorizing lectures and regurgitating it in tests, the student learns by interacting with the content, by doing. The lesson planning process should include the following steps: identifying learning objectives, planning specific learning activities in a logical sequence so the lesson meets its objectives, preparing a method to assess the learning, creating a realistic timeline, planning for the end of the lesson. Like we said, one of the first things you need to do for a lesson plan is to define some clear learning objectives. We'll talk about how to do that effectively in the next video. For now, let's look at the 4 stages of the format lesson planning system that will allow us to figure out and formulate some learning activities that fit with the learning objectives we have in mind. The structure of a format lesson plan is similar to the PPP, or 3P model of lesson planning used by most teachers in Georgia. They both follow the same general structure: review and motivation, presentation and information, practice, production and application. At the review and motivation stage of the lesson, the teacher engages the students in an activity to get them interested in and motivated for the topic of the lesson. They do this by connecting the content to students' experiences, sharing their personal experience, creating an information gap, or reviewing the learned material. For this stage, the teacher should plan to conduct a lead-in activity connected to the upcoming topic or class. Or they could ask the students some questions designed to activate their background knowledge relating to the lesson topic. Instead of just throwing out a few spoken questions, you could do something more formal and active, like having your students reflect on a series of written questions related to the topic, or asking them to complete a true-false quiz on the topic. In any case, the 2 goals of the review and motivation stage are helping learners to see the benefit of the lesson and connecting what they already know to what they will learn. During the presentation and information stage, new material like vocabulary or grammar is introduced. Be creative. Use visual resources like flashcards, posters, or magazine pictures, or technological resources such as songs and internet articles to make this section as engaging as possible. This stage can take the form of an interactive lecture, a reading, or a PowerPoint presentation. You could incorporate a video or audio clip to show something about the lesson topic, or a dialogue that demonstrates a language feature used in a real context. Such a presentation will often be followed by an explanation, models, or conceptual tools, so that students can be explicitly clear on the rules and principles of what they experienced in the presentation. The practice stage of the lesson allows students to practice the newly introduced language structure or vocabulary in a more controlled way. This stage is often called controlled or semi-controlled practice, where accuracy is important and error correction takes place. The practice stage of the class lets students understand how the language works in practice. You can use different controlled activities like questions and answers, read and repeat, worksheets, and games. The production and application stage of the lesson encourages students to use the language of the lesson in new ways. During this stage, students demonstrate how they've internalized the language they've learned. The free practice in this stage can include a number of different tasks from various methodologies. You should provide students with opportunities to apply their skills in authentic situations, using group and pair work, creating dialogues, or with role plays, creating stories, doing interviews, playing games, making skits, or giving presentations. The final stage of the format lesson plan is assessment. This is a very important part of any lesson that allows a teacher to measure how well the students have mastered the material and then use this information to plan better classes in the future. This section is an opportunity for a teacher to evaluate their students, their lesson, and their teaching effectiveness. How well were students able to do what the teacher taught them? You can assess them using quizzes, homework assignments, projects, and tests. You could also observe them during the production stage of the lesson as an opportunity to assess your students' progress. What problems were there, if any, And how will you address those issues in future lessons? Student confusion, classroom management, lesson content too advanced or too easy, activities that fail to meet your learning objectives. What was successful about your lesson? Activities that all your students enjoyed and were engaged in, resources that effectively introduced or demonstrated your lesson content, teaching methods that your students responded positively to. Using the format model increases student motivation and participation in the lesson, which makes the lessons more engaging and enjoyable, and so students become more self-confident.